We come in this week's Parsha to the next chapter, literally and figuratively, in the children of Israel's saga coming out of slavery in Egypt through the Red Sea to freedom into the wilderness, right? Complete fulfillment of coming to the promised land does not happen all at once. They're still in the wilderness. They come to Mount Sinai. They receive the Ten Commandments and many laws that help translate into reality this vision of justice and holiness. They encounter the divine presence according to how we each understand that. And we come now to the moment when Moses, listening for the divine voice, again, according to how we each envision that, at the top of Mount Sinai, begins to receive the instructions for the children of Israel to build the tabernacle, the Mishkan, the portable sanctuary in the wilderness that will ensure that this sense of the inspiration of the divine from Mount Sinai, this literally thundering sense of the values of justice and equality and freedom and ways to find holiness in our lives through experiences like Shabbat, will be part of the children of Israel's lives, not just once in this peak moment in their history at Mount Sinai, but will continue to be a part of their lives through having the Mishkan, the tabernacle, as a designated special sacred place in which to sense the presence of the divine. And then ultimately in the land of Israel, they will have the temple for the same role, coming of course up to the present where right now as well, here we are gathered in a designated place where we come and we know it prompts our minds to sense the presence of the divine. The divine of course is everywhere, but it helps us to have a special place that prompts our psyches to be attuned to sensing it. So a very important project indeed, something deeply important for the life of the people. So how is it going to be done? It's going to be carried out in a way that has a great deal to teach us, to give us inspiration and guidance for how we can address the times that we are in now. Because we come to this week's Parsha, and as God begins to give the instructions about the tabernacle, we find that the people are going to have to give for there to be materials to make the tabernacle out of. And there's two genres of the kinds of giving that we're going to see. Genre number one, we see in this week's Parsha this incredible array of the most beautiful kinds of things that are going to be a part of this new sanctuary. God says, "And this is the donation you shall take from them, the people, gold and silver and bronze, and indigo and purple and crimson and linen and goat hair." Now, the goat hair might sound a little funny, but actually that fabric, or mohair as it's also called, is actually very similar to silk. So that's not to be sneezed at. Goat hair is apparently amazing stuff. If there's anyone in here who works in fabrics, they probably knew that already. I discovered that in preparing for this Torah. You always learn something new. So that's the kind of thing that we're going to have in the sanctuary. It's going to be the most incredibly beautiful materials. Robert Alter, the great Bible translator and commentator of the current day from UC Berkeley, whose edition of the Torah this is, he writes in his commentary that processes of dye production in the ancient world were immensely laborious. They're derived, some of them from eggs, they're derived from all kinds of things in nature. So these colors were used especially for royal garments. Hence we think of purple as a royal color. So how are these things going to become, in practice, part of this project? Well, a couple parshas ahead from now, Moses gives all these instructions to the people. And what we see is that there's this beautiful description of how each person is going to have to give these things. We see every person with whom was found, indigo and purple and crimson and linen and goat hair, brought it, right? If you have it, then you bring it. And not everybody has the chance to have these fine colored dyed materials or gold and silver, but if you have it, you should bring it, right? And then it continues, "And every woman wise-hearted with her hands spun and brought the threadwork of indigo and purple and crimson and linen." If you have the talent for weaving, then you should use it. Not everyone has a talent for weaving. I know I don't. But if you have that talent, you should use it, right? And the text continues that Beth will be the master architect, right? If you have a talent in architecture, Again, I don't, but thank God Barry Clapper does, so that not only in her firm can she do great work, but she can be the head of the house committee and oversee beautiful renovations like the one we have in our very building. Thank you, Barry. Right? So everyone has to use their talent. We see here that there's going to be stone cutting to be done, there's wood carving to be done, all sorts of different tasks that are going to be a part of the project. Right? And if you have it, you should bring it. If you have the talent, you should use it. So that's one genre of giving. But there's another genre of giving as well, and this is where we come to the fact that this Shabbat is Shabbat Shekalim, the Shabbat of Shekels, because this is the special passage that's added to the Torah readings for Shabbat Shekalim. In the Parshat, we're going to come to it again a few weeks from now. But this Shabbat, the Shabbat that leads up to Adar and in turn up to the holiday of Purim, we have this special reading that tells us about the practice of the role of, well, I could make something up, but if you don't mind waiting 5 seconds, I can read you the exact words. Here's what's going to happen. There's going to be a census of each person. This shall each who undergoes the census shall give half a shekel, a donation to the Lord, to the Eternal One, Adonai. Whoever undergoes the count from 20 years old and up shall give the Eternal One's donation. The rich person shall not give more, and the poor person shall not give less than half a shekel. Half a shekel is a very small amount, and therefore something that everybody can give, and that everybody can give alike. Ancient Israel didn't have coins or bills with denominations, 5 cents, 10 cents. That was a later advance in world history. So they had pieces of silver. And shekel literally means weight, right? If you have, 100, 200, 300 pieces of silver, you can do a lot. And there's a lot of Bible stories about that. Half a shekel, that's barely any weight of silver at all. Actually, it's, as Robert Alter tells us, it's, as archaeologists have found, 1 shekel is about 11 grams. So half a shekel is about 5.5 grams. Less weight of silver than a pencil. Pencil's about 7 grams. I looked that up as well in preparing for this Devar Torah. You always learn something new when you study Torah, right? So less than a pencil's worth of weight of silver. That is not very much at all. And that's the point. Because this is something everyone can do. No matter what else you have access to, whether in terms of any number of different kinds of things, doesn't matter. Everybody can give half a shekel. And even if you could give more, you actually can't. Right? The rich person shall not give more. Even if you could give more, that isn't the point. Right? No one is supposed to approach the half shekel like, Steve Carell in The Office buying the expensive iPod to put into the holiday giving when there's actually a $20 limit. No one's supposed to do that, which includes Steve Carell in that episode. And actually, he atones for it in season 7, but that's a different story for a different time. Maybe we'll talk about that on Yom Kippur, who knows? So, you can't give more even if you could, because that would defeat the purpose. The purpose is that everybody chips in, everybody can, and everybody must. And this is a very beautiful idea that we see. Because what we see is that there's something each of us can do, therefore there's something each of us must do, and that actually it's part of the census, right? So the fact that we give, that we sacrifice a little, but it's something each of us can do, that we make a difference, that actually defines our membership in the community. That's part of what it is to be a part of something, is what we give to make a difference. It's the half shekel from each person that makes sure that the sanctuary, or later the temple in Jerusalem, is upkept well. That's what keeps the whole thing running. A half shekel being so little and being so easy to give, it struck me as being a bit like the March of Dimes that FDR started in the 1930s, right? To cure polio and to fund the vaccine that ultimately did cure polio, the Salk vaccine. The idea is that this is like a dime, that a half shekel is something everybody can give. And so we see this ethos of equality, of participation, and of the fact that that defines our membership as being part of something vaster than each of us. And the great late 20th century American Jewish legal scholar, Robert Cover of Yale Law School, talked about this in his work. He writes, "To be one who acts out of obligation is the closest thing there is to a Jewish definition of completion as a person within the community. It's a beautiful idea, I think. Again, not only that we each can, but that means we each must. Robert Cover contrasts this sense of obligation in Jewish law as a value with the Western approach that often emphasizes freedom as a core value, which doesn't mean that one is per se right or wrong. It isn't about that. But when we understand values from different perspectives with different languages and different ways of framing them, it can open our eyes to something that we hadn't seen before, right? Robert Cover talks about how in the West, freedom is this very core value, and the word freedom is used so much. Whereas in Jewish tradition, the central word of the Jewish legal system is mitzvah, commandment, right? Obligation, right? A child who turns 18 is thought of as emancipated. You can become an emancipated minor before 18. Whereas in Jewish tradition, to become a bar or bat or bet mitzvah is to come of age, not because you're emancipated, but actually because now the obligations are incumbent on you. And by taking on these obligations, that's what makes you part of something bigger than all of us. That's what makes us all in this together. That's what makes us all part of the tradition that ultimately goes all the way back to Mount Sinai in the very story of the Torah itself. So in our time, there are, we each, like our ancestors, have different genres of contributions we can make. Let's say you're the CEO of a nonprofit or the president of a university, or let's say that you're in Washington in government. Maybe in that case, you can make an outsized impact. But what the Torah is saying is that there's also something each of us can do. And if we each can, then we each must. And what we might have thought otherwise is, well, what difference am I going to make? Come on, I'm just one person. How is that going to make any difference at all? And we all know that feeling. Sometimes that can even lead to sadness or even to despair. And what the Torah is saying is, I validate the emotion, and I have good news. That's not the case. Each of us can give our half-shekel, our machatzit ha-shekel of contribution to making things better, to the upkeep of the temple of all that is good in this world. And if we all do it, that adds up to quite a lot. It was enough to build the Mishkan and enough to upkeep the temple. So indeed, that is quite a bit. Because not only is the world that much better off when we give what we can and do what we can, not only does it add up, but it's not even possible for the temple to exist without each of us doing our part. And with each of us not only able to, but therefore obliged to make the most of what we can do. So I invite each of us to take a moment and to close your eyes if that particularly speaks to you. And I invite each of us to ask ourselves, what is our half-shekel? What is our machatzit ha-shekel? What is the difference that we can make now? What can we do to respond to our times and face them and react in them according to our values and make our times that much better than they would be had we not done what we did? Open your eyes. This half-shekel, this machatzit ha-shekel of our own time is not only our sacred duty, but it's our membership, it's our sense of belonging. It makes us part of something vaster than any one of us alone. Something vaster that, as the Israeli philosopher Moshe Halbertal says about the Torah, is both normative and formative. Normative, when we do what we can, we're living out the values that are incumbent on us, and we're taking part in a project that is vaster than what any one of us can do alone. But also formative, when we contribute to something vaster than any one of us, that makes us a part of something, part of a community, part of a tradition, part of a family, and it's part of our identity that's vaster than any one of us alone. And to belong to that greater something, to be a part of it, is a great blessing, full, God willing, of fruitfulness and of meaning and of joy and of love. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.